Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us the neighborhood you live in and how long you've lived in Providence.
So my name is Joe Van Dyke. I go by Jay Van Dyke, but Joe is fine also. I've been in Providence since 2013. I moved here from Wisconsin. I moved here to become a police officer with Metro, so I've been here since then. I live in Hampton Glen, which is part of the Bar Harbor Glen HOA, and I've been on the board of directors for Bar Harbor Glen for about 1 year now.
Awesome. Can you please tell us why you like to be on the board of directors, and if you are elected, what would you make a priority for the board?
So one of the reasons that I want to get on the board is because in 2019, the end of 2019, the homeowners were told that we would have to pay an extra $120 a year towards assessments. That's a 20% increase over what we were paying previously. So one of the things that upset me about that was not so much the increase, but just once I was bored and I started looking at some of the financials of the previous years that led up to that and tried to understand why we needed that extra money. Costs always go up, so I didn't think that it was necessarily a bad thing that all of a sudden I'd have to pay more. So, and honestly, when I first moved here, I didn't even know anything about HOAs. I didn't come from a place that had HOAs. I came from Milwaukee. HOAs don't exist there. So when I moved here, I didn't really know anything about them. I was not involved in the HOA. Like I said, I've been here since 2013. I was never involved with the HOA until that 2019 when that assessment increase came. And that's what I'm a big numbers person. I'm a budget person. I like looking at financials and stuff. I went to college for accounting. So I'm familiar with how to read financial statements and understand financials. So I wanted to look through some of the financials one night when I was bored and just try to understand why it was that we were needing that extra money. And I wasn't really happy with what I found because I learned that, so going back a little bit, in 2015, we had a reserve study done. And that reserve study suggested that we spend $222,000 per year into savings. We were overfunded at that time. We had a lot of money that wasn't necessarily needed. So the reserve study recommended only $222,000 per year. The board responded in 2016. I have some specific numbers. In 2016, we put $60,000 into our reserve, which is $162,000 short. The following 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, we did $84,000 per year. And again, we were supposed to do $222 per year. So by the end of those 4 years, we were $576,000 short. So I wasn't happy to find out that we were underfunding our reserves. And the reserve study specialist in 2015 even warned us that we would, if we underfunded the reserves, we were given a warning in 2015 that would lead to deferred maintenance and or assessment increases. Well, lo and behold, 4 years later, that's exactly what happened. The assessment went up 20% and the irrigation system failed and we didn't have the money to pay for that. So the plan that was developed was a 5-year plan to fix that. A 5-year plan to fix something that's spraying water all over our community, that's the definition of deferred maintenance. So we were warned about those things in 2015, but we didn't properly prepare for those events to happen. But in the meantime, in those same 4 years, we spent $4 million on a park, which actually required a loan because we didn't have the money for that. We spent $3.2 million on courtesy patrol, and we spent $850,000 on entertainment. So over those 4 years, that's $2 million per year in waste. It's $8 million in waste. And I use the word waste because talking about things like the entertainment, the events, the courtesy patrol, I can argue with a homeowner that disagrees with me all day until we're blue in the face over whether or not we need those things. My opinion may be different than others, but at the end of the day, there's a simple fact, and that's indisputable. The fact of the matter is that those things are not required by Nevada law, and they're not required by our governing documents. There's nothing in law or the CC&Rs that require Providence to pay for those things. Like I said, I've lived here since 2013. I didn't know what a board meeting was. I didn't know what an HOA was. I'm not adamantly against spending money on those things if we have the money. You never saw me in a board meeting in 2013, 14, or 15 complaining about how much money was being spent. I didn't care. The reason I started to care and a bunch of homeowners started to care was because they came after us for another $120 a year. So that was kind of the issue for me.
Okay, awesome. For my next question, it's a 3-part question. How would you prioritize spending considering our current reserve levels? Additionally, what are your thoughts on bringing back the lifestyle program, events, contests, etc.? And as a board member, how would you propose doing that and being fiscally responsible?
Yeah, so like I talked about, obviously we have some budget problems right now, and they started back in 2016 when we were spending astronomical amounts of money on things that were not required, while at the same time not funding the reserves, which is required. That is required by law that we do that. So one of the things I think is, like I mentioned, I'm not opposed to events and lifestyles and the entertainment side of Providence. I think a lot of homeowners enjoy those things. I'm not against doing those things. And to be clear, the current board is not against that either. They never took away the events. They never said that homeowners cannot have events, that we can't do any type of entertainment. All they did is they took away the checkbook. They took away the money that was going to pay for those things. So one of the things is, because the HOA is not required by law or CC&Rs to fund those things, one of the things that I think is important is the people that choose to participate in those things should be the ones paying for it. And I don't think the smaller events don't cost hardly anything. Get together and do a cooking night or a painting night. I know the painting nights were big. Game nights. Anything like that I know a lot of homeowners used to enjoy that we don't do anymore. Nobody ever said that we can't do those anymore. It was just that they took the money away. And when the money got taken away, all the volunteers of the Social Lifestyle Committee completely disappeared. I don't know where they went. I don't know if anybody knows where they went. So one of the things that I would like to do if I get elected is to put it out there again that we're not against socials. We're not against events or the entertainment, the fun stuff. We just have to change how we pay for it. So if we can get a group of homeowners together that want to be on the Social Lifestyle Committee, revive that committee, and tell them, hey, you guys can plan whatever events you want, come up with some ideas, get homeowner input, do whatever you need to do, and plan some events, put it before the board, and come up with a plan for how we're going to pay for it. Hey, if we expect 20 people to come to this event and it's going to cost us $200 to get painting supplies for everyone to do painting nights, then simple math, you just charge $10 per person. I don't think that's overly difficult or too complicated to accomplish. Another thing that I think I've kind of tossed the idea around in my head the last couple of days, just as I've been contemplating this, is the assessment used to be $150 per quarter. And like I said, it went up $120 per year. It went up $10 a month. So what I would like to do is get the assessment back down to $150. I don't think that's out of the question. We've made a lot of progress in 2021, cutting a lot of unnecessary costs, and I think there's a lot more to be done. But when we cut those costs down to where they should be, it's not hard to get the assessment back to $150. In fact, I think it's actually very easy. I've studied the financials a lot over the last 2 years. I've come to all the board meetings. I speak at most of the board meetings. I regularly talk to management. I'm very familiar with our budget and our numbers, and I don't think it's difficult at all to get the assessment back to $150. So what I would do for lifestyles then is these homeowners that want to do lifestyles, I follow a lot of posts on Facebook. You guys probably have seen me on Facebook. I'm pretty active on the various Providence pages. There's a lot of homeowners on there that say, well, I don't mind paying the extra money for the events. Okay, so why don't we get the assessment back to $150, and then we offer some type of, like as part of the traditions program, the pass that homeowners can have on their phone. Why don't we offer some type of a pass that would cost maybe $120 a year that would get you into the events that you want to get into? Those people that want to do that would pay exactly what they pay right now, $180 per quarter, essentially. They pay the $150 in assessment that everybody pays, and then they would pay the extra $120 a year or $10 a month for the events. And if you don't want to buy that pass, I think we should have the option for people to pay at the door. Hey, if you get in for free, if you have the pass. If you don't have the pass, $10 for this event, or whatever it might be. The issue with the Lifestyles program is that we're spending the money of all 5,600 homeowners on things that are not attended historically, or not attended by a very large number of homeowners, which is fine. Not everybody wants to do painting nights. I've lived here since 2013. I've gone to maybe one event, and it might have been a 4th of July. I honestly couldn't even tell you because I've never been that active in the socials. But you shouldn't take my money to pay for someone else's fun. I think that idea of a pass is a good idea. The homeowners that want to pay can. The homeowners that don't want to pay don't have to. We have 5,600 homeowners here, 5,600 properties. And one thing that a lot of people forget sometimes is that doesn't mean 5,600 people live in Providence. Providence is a family place. A lot of the households have multiple people in them. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say the average home is probably 3 people, maybe even if it's 2. Even if it's 2, you're still looking at over 10,000 people in Providence. So when you have an event that 30, 40, or even 100 show up, that's not a large number of Providence. It's a bad argument to say that we should take the money of all 5,600 in order to entertain less than 1% of the people that live here. If we had extra money that we didn't know what to do with, I don't think that would be a terrible idea necessarily. In fact, I probably wouldn't even be opposed to spending some money on the events if we had that money. But the problem is even with all the changes that we've made, we're still over $1 million short in our reserves. And another issue with the reserve study, I'll talk more about this later, is the perimeter walls. We don't have the money to replace these perimeter walls that we need to replace. There's certain things that we have to pay for. We have to. It's not arguable. Like I said, we could argue till we're blue in the face over whether we should spend money on this or spend money on that. But the law and the CC&Rs define certain things that we absolutely have to spend money for. And that's what our assessment dollars should go to. Everything above that should be the people that choose to participate in those amenities should pay for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As you know, there are a lot of moving pieces to keep the community running smoothly. What are some of the strengths that you will bring as a board member if you are elected?
So, like I said, I'm a police officer here. So, police officers, I'll talk more about this in a second, but a lot of communication skills, a lot of problem solving, and a lot of decision making. Specific to HOAs, I think one of the strengths I have is that I'm very familiar with Providence. I've like I said, prior to 2019, I never came to a single board meeting. I was, like most homeowners, very uninvolved, very unfamiliar with what went on with an HOA. But once that assessment went up and I started researching the financials, I started coming to the board meetings, and I haven't missed a single one since then. Even during the pandemic when they were virtual, I watched them live. I would send my email in with my question that I wanted read or my statement that I wanted read for the Zoom board meeting. Once they went back to in-person, I've come to every single board meeting. I speak at most, if not all of them. I've had comments. I've engaged with management on many occasions about different questions that I had or things that I'm trying to understand. One of the things that I did, like I said, I'm kind of a numbers guy. I'm a stats guy. So a lot of people talking about courtesy patrol. So last year, another homeowner and I grabbed from management over 2,000 incident reports from our old courtesy patrol company, which is Securitas, and went over those. It was, I want to say it was about a 6-month period, 6 or 9 months, I don't remember these, but it was about 2,000 incident reports. And we were trying to gauge and quantify what courtesy patrol actually does, because there's a lot of homeowners that say, well, I called them and they were really helpful, or I saw them sitting here in the park and they weren't doing anything. So lots of different opinions, but like I said before about facts, I'm a facts-based guy. I want to make a decision based on quantified facts and statistics. So when we went over these courtesy patrol reports, we found that 0.2% of their reports dealt with suspicious activity where the police were called. So a lot of times people say one of the benefits to courtesy patrol is I can call them, report suspicious activity, they can check on it, they can call police, they can help the homeowner call police if they're just nervous. Some people just don't like to call the police, whatever the case is. But that only happens 0.2% of the time, and it happened at a rate of once every 43 days. So when we're paying $500,000 to $800,000 a year for something that deals with suspicious activity like that, maybe 8 or 9 times a year, that's way too expensive. It doesn't matter if 1 or 2 homeowners had a great experience with them. I'm glad that they had a good experience with them, but is it really worth spending that money on it? I would say absolutely not. Another thing is 58% of the calls from residents to courtesy patrol are actually management issues. They're issues like this car is illegally parked, and that's actually an issue for the sub-association. It's not even an issue for Providence at all. A lot of people would call in and say, there's someone running around the park with a dog off their leash. Courtesy patrol can't do anything about that. They can't do anything about most of the calls they get. A lot of the calls that they would get were things like water leaks. And it was like something like less than 5% of their calls about water leaks were actually forwarded to management, according to their reports. And that's not acceptable. When we pay a vendor to monitor things like that, we expect them to communicate with our management team because they're the ones that are going to coordinate those repairs and getting those things fixed. So like I said, I like things to be quantified. So going back to the question of strengths, I'm able to do those types of things. I'm able to look at something that we're spending money on and try to quantify its value and whether or not it matters to our community. Not if it matters to one or two homeowners because they had a good experience with them or they enjoy this or they enjoy that. It's about what's good for the whole community. And I talked about kind of going back to me being a police officer. That's something that I have to deal with all the time. I'm actually a training officer, so I train new cops when they come out of the police academy. And one of the things I always tell them is when we go to a call and we're dealing with citizens, those citizens are usually not happy with what decision we come to. But I'm not making a decision based on what that one citizen wants me to do. I serve the entire community. And as a board member, it's the same concept. You have to serve the entire community of Providence and what's the better good, what's the best interest of the entire community. Not because one homeowner wants this or one homeowner wants that. It's about what's good for Providence as a whole. And I think my experience in policing and being able to make those tough choices that are not always popular is a strength because I can look at both sides to a situation and I can try to quantify it and come to a decision that is within the law, within our CC&Rs, and acceptable and good for the entire community rather than just one or two homeowners.
Excellent. And you addressed this earlier as far as the challenges for the board and or the community facing. What changes, if you want to elaborate more on that, would you implement to address those particular concerns that you have?
Yeah, so I mentioned the perimeter walls, and so one of the things that happened, we did this reserve study in 2015, and that was missing the irrigation project. And management and the board said that that's why we needed to raise the assessment because we never saved for the irrigation system. And one of my fears is that I noticed the same thing with the perimeter walls. We redid the reserve study in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and the perimeter walls are missing from that. That's another multi-million-dollar project. We are responsible for those perimeter walls, and we have to maintain those. That's, again, going back to what we have to spend and what we don't have to spend. We have to spend money on those perimeter walls. So we have to redo the reserve study to get that figured out so we can get a better picture of where we are financially. Currently, the reserve study puts us at about 49% funded, which is much better than what we were a year ago, but we still have a long ways to go on that. We're still $1.1 million short. We still have $100,000 in the Huckleberry Park loan, approximately, that we still have to pay off. We need to get all that stuff paid for. We need to get our expenses under control so that we can move forward and have more money to spend on things that people want. People are mad that we're not decorating this year for the holidays. It's not because we're Scrooges and the board doesn't want to spend money on that stuff. It's because there is no money to spend. It's been spent on other things in previous years that we're now paying the price for. Those previous board members ought to be ashamed of themselves because spending $8 million over 4 years while not having enough for your savings is that's terrible fiscal responsibility, and that's what I want to do. Is I want to get on the board and get our finances back under control so that we can get Providence back to where we all want it to be.
Thank you. And finally, why should the residents of Providence vote for you to be on the board of directors?
Well, I mean, if you agree with most of what I said, I think that's a reason enough to vote for me. I'm familiar with the matters that Providence is facing right now. I'm regularly attending board meetings. You're going to have an active board member because I've been an active homeowner. I'm not somebody that's unfamiliar with the issues. We have a couple other candidates running. Christia Clayton and Anthony Fox are equally fiscally responsible. So when this whole thing started in 2019, a bunch of us as homeowners kind of got together and looked at different things together. And it was the same group of homeowners that Phil Chapman and Katie Hedlund came out of. And they also were never involved in board meetings prior to this all happening. So we're all like-minded. So I would encourage you to vote for myself as well as Christia and Anthony Fox. If you want to see any of our bios, they're all posted on providencehoavoice.com, or you can go on our Facebook page, which is Providence HOA Voice. You can reach out to me there on Facebook. I'm Jay Van Dyke on Facebook. I'm sure you've seen me on those Facebook pages.
Awesome. Anything else you would like to add?
Nope, thank you.